Welcome to All Things Thor, Becoming an Imagineer, Part 7. Yes, Part 7, and we're not done. It's been a great story so far, and I know Tom has a lot more to share with us in the coming episodes. It's great learning about all the work and creative process that goes into creating an attraction, and Tom's been having a lot of fun sharing his stories with us. So without further ado, I hand the reins over to Tom for episode 7 of Becoming an Imagineer of the podcast All Things Thor.
Okay, well, I guess we're at episode number 7. I have been really having a lot of fun with this, and it's actually bringing back a lot of memories I haven't thought about in a long time, and with mixed emotions. But I think it's good for me, and it's good to be able to share these experiences for someone who may seek a similar career in the future, or just be curious what happens, in a career like this as an Imagineer. So, continuing, let's go to about this time. It was approaching Halloween, and back then, I'd say it's about 1996. I think it was. It's either 95 or 96. Halloween, which was a big day at WDI because, historically they always, you got a bunch of some of the most creative people in the world, and of course everyone's trying to outdo each other as to their costumes, and I heard that the ones before I even ever got there were just phenomenal. I mean, it had kind of died down a little bit, but before people would just go nuts, and this, some of the things they came up with were just insanely cool. So it's Halloween, and I came in there to my office. What I decided to do was, since I had worked on an attraction a couple years before, about the Alamo at another company, I also had acquired a reproduction of a 7th Cavalry uniform that was accurately what a 7th Cavalry sergeant would have worn in the Battle of Little Bighorn with General Custer. And so I thought, well, I didn't have time to do anything else at the time, and I thought, well, I'm going to dress up in the full costume, with all the details. And I made a vest, a plastic vest that had these receptacles for screws. They were like nuts that were glued. They were well epoxied onto this vest, and I made some really accurate arrows that were like the real ones that were from the tribes of that time. I believe they were. I can't remember off the top of my head. I can't remember which tribe, so I won't even try. But anyway, I was able to screw the arrows in, because the arrows I had cut at different sizes, and they had a little screw thing at the ends. Screw the arrow through my uniform into these receptacles on the vest. So it really looked like I was riddled with arrows. Like I had just in my back, in my chest, everything. And that I had literally just walked out of Little Bighorn, and somehow, miraculously, whether I was looked at as a ghost or what, it was pretty impressive. It really looked like I just walked out of a hell of a battle. So I was ready just to have fun that day, but all of a sudden I get this I get this notification on my desk that there's a meeting that hadn't been brought to my attention before, that was scheduled at 10:30 that morning, roughly. I think it was mid-morning, by the project manager and initial cost estimator. They were going to do a first pass cost estimation on what my ride was going to be coming in at, and so you got to remember. I mean, this was all in my mind. I mean, they were still trying to figure out so many details that would affect, in my mind, the way this should be estimated, that I felt it kind of premature that they were about to ask me questions so they could put numbers down and start guesstimating the cost of this ride. But it was a mandatory meeting, so I went in there into the small conference room in Maple Building, upper floor, and sitting there was this guy I'd never met before. Typical business type guy. Apparently he had been there for quite a while, and I believe his role was officially like the project manager, and yet he also was asked to come up with an initial bunch of data and crunch some numbers for the estimations. And it was instantly apparent. I could just see as I walked in there, and this guy is looking me up and down, and you could see he was just a genuine smartass. He was just a cocky smartass, and that it looked like I could feel it in the room with the other guys. I didn't know who the other guys were, part of his entourage, but I could feel it, that I was about to get, a major, my feet put to the fire for sure. So here I am, this is a serious meeting, and I'm trying to push into the meeting to get into a seat, and I've got arrows sticking out of me everywhere, and I almost put the eye out of one guy on one of the chairs, and as I'm walking by him because of the arrow sticking out. And this guy just gets right down to brass tacks. He's not amused by me at all. Doesn't find anything funny, nothing. And he just starts hitting me. He has this sort of hitting me with questions. He has this snarky, sarcastic grin on his face. You could tell he was just going to humiliate me. He wanted to. He just had that look, and his whole entourage was snickering and had that attitude as they would look. Their eyes would just kind of look me up and down, and I was very uncomfortable, to say the least, and unprepared, because all I had brought with me was what was in my head, because I didn't know what this meeting was going to entail. And he had all the papers, though, of all of the descriptions that had been put together of my ride, and all my artwork and storyboards and everything that had been copied and put into a big document that he could leaf through. So he gets down to brass tacks, and just starts hitting me. So he goes, in this scene, what is that giant mushroom made out of? And I'm like, before I can even finish my sentence, how tall is it? And in this scene, how many of the creatures are actually moving animatronics? Well, I think about, and what about this scene? Are these fully dimensional props? And Are they, or is that a mural, or is that fully dimensional? And this here, is that real water, or is that part of a painting? And he just was just slinging this stuff at me left and right. Stuff I never was given the opportunity to prepare answers for, or write down anything other than in storyboards, visuals, and my storytelling capabilities, But maybe it had something to do with that uniform I was wearing, because I was thinking to myself, I'm not going to let this SOB humiliate me. And I had enough time in my brain over all these months. I mean, this is probably going on, I don't know. Maybe I was there for almost a year at that point. I'm not sure. But I was able to take his curveballs that he pitched at me, and each time I was able to hit them back. And in my head, I had been through these things so many times that I had all the ideas in my brain how they were going to be created three-dimensionally. And I could tell it was catching them off guard, because I had an answer for every single one of these things. I sometimes would say, I have thought about it, but it could be 3 different ways we could do this, blah, blah, blah. And I would explain that this, after a certain amount of feet, since we're going into the atmosphere of the set, things could be less dimensional. We could even have murals and such that were peeking through various portals that were illuminated way in the background, and this and that, and I just kept hitting the ball right back at him with answers. Every attempt he made to intimidate me, because for me, that was the meaning of what an Imagineer is. And the difference between just an artist, which isn't bad at all either, because I consider myself an artist as proudly as I do in that role as an Imagineer. But in my mind, what an Imagineer was someone who could do many things to take an idea and turn it into a real thing. To actually, as the corny saying that they always say there is, make magic. They used to have license plates for people who were Imagineers that said, "I'm part of the magic" on the frames of the license plate. I never got one. I thought that was a little much, but it's true. I mean, I had to think about a lot of things. I had to think like I was playing chess. I had to think 10 moves ahead, and I was thinking that at one point or another I was going to be grilled like this for how all these pictures and paintings and little sculptures I was making that people were starting to fall in love with in the company, that I was going to be held responsible for, making it happen. And we had our client, Disney, didn't just do this alone. We were working with the Oriental Land Company, who was fitting quite a bit of the funding for this. So they had to buy into it too. They had to be excited and with the attractions as they were developing for DisneySea. And so it was always a challenge, and every time I sold a concept and I got praised for it, it was as satisfying as it was horrifying, because I knew now I had to come through somehow at some point in time, or at least I thought I would. So, well, um, as this meeting went on and I kept knocking out these answers, I could tell this smartass's grin was starting to fade. And he just kind of chilled out a little bit and just continued asking me some of the other questions. And I just had, calmly answered. And I was sweating underneath my 7th Cavalry uniform, but I did everything I needed to do to appear cool and collected and knowledgeable. And I think he started to sense that maybe this guy knows what he's doing. So after this 2-hour grilling, meeting was adjourned, and I left the meeting a survivor. A dozen arrows sticking out of my back and chest, but it was clear that I was a survivor. And so, I just walked down Little Bighorn Valley to my office, fortress, to keep making magic.